My name is Lucy Nalpathanchil. My earliest memory of a public library, when I was a child, my parents were immigrants, first generation, and they worked a lot. And one of the safe places that my parents felt that I could spend my time was our town public library. And so from the time that I was a small child was when I remember our children's department of our public library. And back then, they had a little guinea pig in a cage and fish in an aquarium. And I remember spending so many days of my summer vacation at the public library, reading books, doing the children's programming, the puppet shows, the sing-alongs. Before I entered public school, I remember going to our public library. Well, I was a voracious reader, and I think part of the reason I became such a lifelong reader, you should see my nightstand today as an adult, where I have books piled as I start one and then I start another before I finish the book. But I just feel like my love for reading, for learning, from entering different worlds, using my imagination was cultivated from my time as a reader of children's books. I remember still attending the town library where I grew up in Pennsylvania. When I was a teenager, I think then junior high, high school, we spent a lot of time in our school library doing research projects, studying with friends. I went to Duquesne University in Pittsburgh, and I remember before finals, I'd spend a lot of time at the library. And so it was a place, again, where I could put my full attention towards whether it's getting my work done or studying for a final exam. Libraries have been a really important part of my life in terms of feeling that it's a place that welcomed me. The impact that libraries had in my formative years. Well, again, I feel like my love of books and reading was cultivated because I was a patron of the public library. We talk a lot about communities and connections, especially as we grow older, whether it's family or friends. But I think a sign of a strong community is having a public library again, and libraries being open to all, and knowing that a library is a place for gathering. And if you want to learn, it's also a place that's open to people from different backgrounds. And I've always found that people who work in libraries, I remember the children's librarian, the smile on her face, how she always welcomed the children. You felt comforted. I think those experiences, even today, when I go to our library in the town where I live now and bring my children, I always make a point to talk to the circulation desk staff or the children's librarian because you want to have that connection with them as well. And you feel like they really do want to know about you. They're not just there fulfilling a job, so to speak. Well, it's funny you bring up technology because now we live in a world where social media is king, where we are easily distracted, and libraries are also places that can connect people to technology. But at the same time, it's also a nice place to get away from those distractions. When you're in a chair reading a book or participating in a program, again, there's that connection at libraries that, it's hard to find in other places. Connecting people to information, seeking out knowledge, that is part of a thriving democracy. Knowledge is power, and libraries in our increasingly partisan society, libraries have been thrown into the conversation, the conflict around what books should be available and who is most welcome at a library and who should be welcome at a library. And, just going back to what I shared with you earlier, every person that I encountered in a public library welcomed me with a smile, with a how can I help you? And I think that is something that we can all carry into our adult lives, whatever career we have or even our interactions with others. That really stood out to me from my time in libraries. Well, I'd mentioned my parents were immigrants, so something that they always instilled into me was the importance of hard work and studying and being prepared. And so I think, again, when we think back to libraries have helped me do all of those things. And that's something that I work to instill in my children, the importance of hard work and dedication. You're talking with us at Connecticut Public, and one of our taglines is that we're media for the curious. And so if somebody is interested in becoming a journalist, I mean, the first step is curiosity. And then also to be open to different perspectives, because we all come from different places. We've been raised differently. We have different value systems, different beliefs, and we shouldn't close ourselves from understanding a person's perspective if they may have different beliefs or values, or we may not understand where they come from because they're not like us. It's always important to ask questions and really listen to someone. I'd mentioned earlier how our lives are so dominated now by social media, but I feel like also how we talk to one another, having the ability to just have a conversation, like that is a skill that people don't know how to have that conversation because they might not understand where a person comes from, so they make assumptions and generalize, or maybe just see something in their social media feed, or we have a tendency to want to one-up the other person. Well, I know more and I know better, and here's what I know. And that's not a helpful way to have a conversation. Just to get back to your original point, what would you say to someone who's interested in journalism? Again, it's like learning how to have a conversation, to listen, to be curious. And it's also important to seek out sources that you're confident in their accuracy. And that's why libraries are so important. Librarians and others are trained on the information that is most credible and where you can go. And if you have trouble finding that information, they can help point you the right direction. Back when I was growing up, you'd hear that phrase about someone was well read. And so now it's not just reading books, but making sure that you're a consumer of news and information that is accurate and credible. You want to treat others like you want to be treated, right? Kindness is important. And even when you disagree with someone, again, like how you interact with them, that is a sign of respect. Again, not generalizing, not assuming that the person you're talking with doesn't know as much as you do. When we take away those assumptions and we fight against those generalizations that we want to make of somebody, that's a sign of respect. That you come as a full individual and you assume that the person across from you also is being genuine. So I think that's a sign of respect, assuming that people are coming as they are and trying to really hear what they're saying without making those assumptions. To be honest, I was a little teary talking with you earlier because right before I came to talk with you, I was talking with a colleague who has family that was dealing with the flooding that happened in the valley just a few days ago. And she said something to me about how the thing that from this tragedy and the flooding in like the Oxford, Seymour areas, she's like, there's a lot of hate in the world. And when these kinds of local tragedies happen, you realize like how good people are. Like she was talking about the goodness of people. So that's what was in my heart when I sat down actually to talk about this, how she opened up in the hallway just because I took time to ask her, how are you doing? Because I knew she's from that area. So that's what strikes me when you think about kindness, respect, really being open when you ask someone, how are you doing? And hearing what they want to share with you. I loved hearing that the Hartford Public Library is celebrating 250 years and the rebrand. And because I remember when I came to Connecticut as a reporter back in the end of 2006, I remember going to the main branch right off Main Street and just seeing how vibrant and the energy of that library. Again, Main Street is a busy part of downtown Hartford. And you walk in and there's just so much happening. There are people that, again, feel welcome to come into that space, to use the computers, to peruse the books, to talk with the staff. So to me, it shows that the Hartford Public Library has existed for 250 years. It's because of that vibrancy, that sense of belonging, the fact that it's a place for people to seek out information and connection. There's a reason that it's thriving, and that's because it's hit all of those points. I have to share with you when I was a kid, again, I didn't have a phone. I wasn't worried about TikTok or Snapchat. And I have 2 children, and I can see the difference in the attention that they have on devices and apps and connecting with people online that I didn't even have to worry about as a child in the 80s. Just the idea that I know a lot of people that are adults who don't even go to their library because they don't see that it's a need in their life. But when they have kids, or maybe they're still going back to school for a degree or further study, that's when people think, oh, I should go to the library. But libraries really are natural places of gathering, of community. Libraries have robust programming, and I have to be fully transparent. I've loved libraries since I was a little kid. I'm actually married to a library director. I really do love the library. Because I see, again, the value that libraries bring, the programming, the people, and the books. You can't forget, like, the love of reading. And that's what I worry about is, like, I had such a love of reading as a child, and my kids read, but it's not to the same level of what I was like as a child. And of course, we're all different, but I worry, like, as people get more distracted, do they feel like the library is not something that they need in their life? I tried to be an example, to take them to libraries, to show them that I still love to read, even though I have a busy career, to make time just to be open to reading, whether it's on a device or I'm old school, so I like to hold that book. I like the smell of books. That's how much I love libraries. There's a smell to a book, especially when it's older and it's been sitting on the shelf. And it's not a bad smell. It's a smell that brings positive memories to me when I walk into a library space and walk among the shelves. Well, I'm speaking to you today as Vice President of Community Engagement at Connecticut Public. So I've been using my time as a journalist to further connections in our community between Connecticut Public and valued community partners. And the Hartford Public Library is a valued community partner. And before speaking with you today, we've had conversation with Sam. We've brought in a podcast class from Hartford Public Library. So the adults, even some of the teenagers that were part of the podcast class, could come and see how a public media organization is run, see our studios, talk with our journalists about how they work on their podcasts, how they do interviews. And so I feel like in terms of the legacy of the public library and our connection to it here at Connecticut Public is we see so much value in partnering with an institution that the community loves, the community respects and trusts. And we think that we can learn along with the residents about all of the things that the Hartford Public Library can offer us. And so we look forward to that continued partnership.
Thank you for listening to 250 Stories, a production of HPL Studios at Hartford Public Library. This episode was written and produced by Christopher T. Brown, sound by Sam Sigmund, edited by Faith Lucas, produced by Lucy Nalpathanchil, and with photography and graphic design support from Hartford Public Library's communications team and the Hartford History Center. For more information on this project, visit www.hplstudios.hplct.org. New episodes release every Tuesday, so subscribe to stay tuned.